Welcome to Fútbol MLS, where we talk all things United States soccer, Concacaf, MLS. This is going to be preliminarily an MLS YouTube channel, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, everything is going to be preliminarily MLS. But today, the first video, Gold Cup starts tomorrow. So I thought we'd go through it, a little preview, little analysis on what I think is going to go down, predictions, all things. Welcome to Fútbol MLS. Starting it out in Group A, we've got the United States, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and St. Kitts and Nevis. So let's start it out with the obvious. The United States are the favorite going into this group. They've won the last two Gold Cups. It's not a very strong group, and they have home field advantage. They've got a little bit of a weaker roster than what was there for the Nations League and what was there for the past Gold Cup. Brought in a lot of new players. They've got Zendejas and Sonora from Liga MX. They've got Georgi Mihalovic from AZ Alkmaar and the rest, and then Matt Turner and Gago Slanina from the Premier League. But the rest of the team is a lot of MLS. Defense, very MLS centric. Jalen Neal, Aaron Long, DeJuan Jones, John Tolkien. And then you've got Cade Cowell in the team. It's a lot of young MLS talent in this team. Jesus Ferreira coming back from the World Cup to come back for the U.S. national team. So it's an interesting group of guys that haven't played together. And it's obviously turmoil with the coaching changes. And it's going to be an interesting time for this U.S. team to see if they can really band together and win this tournament again without really having any time playing together. They're going to play their usual Route 1 style with a lot of passing in between attacking midfielders and wingers and striker. But I'm not expecting them to play out of the back. It's not something that I see from this team, especially with Aaron Long, Jalen Neal, Matt Miazga in there at center back potentially. It's not going to be a very possession-based defense. Going forward with the midfield, Kellen Acosta, with Alan Senora, it's going to be more so a possession-based midfield than it is defense, but I don't see them really keeping the 65% possession that was expected. How I expect them to line up going into this tournament, I'm not going to do this for every team. I'm only going to do this for the major teams. It's the United States. I think it's going to be Matt Turner and net. They're going to have Miles Robinson, Aaron Long as the center backs with DeJuan Jones on the left and DeAndre Yedlin on the right. In the midfield, it's going to be James Sands sitting behind Georgi Mihalovic and Gianluca Busio. And up front, it's going to be Jordan Morris on the left, Julian Gressel on the right, Cade Cowell in the center, with Jesus Ferreira and Brandon Vasquez rotating in as helpers up front. It could be either of them. Impact subs are going to be Aiden Morris, Jesus Ferreira, Alejandro Zandejas, John Tolkien. So it's not a particularly strong team going into this Gold Cup, but I do like the MLS centric lineup, and I don't mind it in terms of trying out new things because this team's won the Gold Cup with weaker. So that's all I'm going to say for the U.S. They're going to win the group. That is my prediction for them. Moving into the next side, and this is Jamaica. I think they're going to come second in the group. I'm going in order of the group by the teams I do analysis of. And Jamaica have a great roster. They've got loads of Premier League talent, whether that be newly Jamaican Damari Gray, whether that be Adrian Mariappa, who's playing in the 4th division of English soccer now, but he was a mainstay at Crystal Palace for years, whether that be Bobby De Cordova-Reid, who had a good season this year over at Fulham. And then they've got their fair share of MLS stars as well. They've got Damian Lowe. They've got Andre Blake, who's been one of the best goalkeepers in the league for the past 10 years. They've got Corey Burke. And all of this, they've got this team of good players. They've got Javane Brown, who's been great for Vancouver this season, Kamar Lawrence. But none of this really matters because I don't believe in the coaching that this team puts out. Jamaica, they have a very distinct style of play where they're not playing to the strengths of their team. Leon Bailey, Corey Burke, Damari Gray, Mikhail Antonio are the mainstays in this team. Corey Burke shouldn't be. I'm just put this out there. He shouldn't be playing as much as he is, but he is. And this mainstay, they use the speed on the sides instead of the size in the middle. And what they do, they play a lot of wing play. They have Kamar Lawrence overlapping. They have Javon Brown overlapping. But now you've got Ethan Pinnock in there. Now you've got Deshaun Bernard. They've brought in a lot of new players that were formerly English or formerly of other nationalities for this Gold Cup. And I don't think this is going to change because they haven't changed in the past. Jamaica's been very stagnant in their keeping of their play style. So it's not going to surprise me when first game of the Gold Cup, United States versus Jamaica, they're still playing wing play instead of getting the ball up to Michail Antonio and playing off of him, which what I think would work better. But obviously, that's just my opinion. Jamaica have CONCACAF experience. They have Premier League talent. I just don't believe in the coaching, which is why I don't think they'll beat this makeshift U.S. team. They will finish second in the group and make it through. Way I'm expecting them to go into this Gold Cup, and I'm not going to do the other two lineups from this group just because I can't pretend to know the lineups from this group. I think it's going to be Andre Blake in net, Amari Bell, Ethan Pinnock on the sides with Damian Lowe and Adrian Mariappa in center back, leaving Kamar Lawrence and Deshaun Bernard in the bench. In the midfield, it's going to be Joel Latibuadare from Swansea. It's Latibuadare. Apologies for if I mispronounced that. Along with Preston North End midfielder Daniel Johnson and USL Phoenix Rising midfielder Kavan Lambert, who's been a mainstay in this Jamaican team forever. Then up top, it's going to be Damari Gray, Leon Bailey, and Michail Antonio. Be aware of Dujuan the Whisperer Richards, who has been an absolute menace for Phoenix All-Stars in the Jamaican League and has scored a record amount of goals, and he was recently signed to Chelsea going into this next season. I believe he will stay at Phoenix All-Stars this season and then go to Chelsea the next one, but it's a bright future for the Reggae Boys if they're able to get stuff right. Bobby de Cordova-Reid coming off the bench. Kaheem Paris coming off the bench. A lot of European talent that is on this Jamaican team that can make it a very dangerous team. But I just don't believe in the coaching. Moving into who I believe will come third in the group, and that's Trinidad and Tobago. Obviously, everyone knows about them because of their win over the United States in 2017 that stopped them from making the World Cup. But if we're being for real, I don't think that this team is particularly strong, and they're going to crash out in the group stage. They're unbeaten for a year. They haven't lost a game in a long time, but that's really due to the strength of their opponents. They drew Jamaica and they beat Jamaica in the past year, but I'm not so certain that it's a sustainable team just based on the roster. It's a really halted roster. It's the same team that we saw go out there in 2017. I'm not moved by Jovan Jones, Alvin Jones anymore. Sheldon Battelle. None of these guys are really great in their respective leagues anymore, and they're definitely not going to make a move at the international level. The keys to this team are in the midfield with Kevin Molino, with Ajani Fortune. It's Levi Garcia, but up front they're really lacking. You've got Kyle Offray, young Sporting Kansas City striker, but no real top goal scorers on this team. They're going to be relying a lot on that midfield. Kevin Molino is the mainstay in this team. And then moving on to the last team in this group, that's St. Kitts and the Nevis. They have no Gold Cup experiences, their first ever Gold Cup, but it's also a very, very untalented team. I don't like to be this pessimistic about a team, but it's not a team that has chance creation ability. It's not a team that scores on set pieces. It's a very disciplined team, a team with a great goalkeeper in Jelani Archibald. Captain and goalkeeper, won them 2 penalty shootouts, had a great game against French Guiana in the preliminary round, but it just isn't a team that's going to be able to win a game at this tournament. They might get a draw against Trinidad. Anything can happen in international soccer, but it's just not something I would expect to happen for them to do anything of note in this tournament. They will be finishing fourth in this tournament. Moving into Group B, and this group is Mexico, Qatar, Honduras, and Haiti, and Mexico is going to win this group. They have the strongest roster in this group. They've got some real European talent playing at top clubs in the world. And then they have their Liga MX mainstays that have always been there. This is their top roster. This is, other than Chucky Lozano, who's out injured, this is their roster going into a World Cup. They've got Memo Ochoa, who had a great season at Salernitana. Don't let his age fool you. He is still an absolutely incredible goalkeeper. They've got Julian Araujo, who's playing over at Barca, Jorge Sanchez at Ajax, Edson Alvarez at Ajax. And this is a good defense European-wise, but they've also got their Jesus Gallardo playing at Monterrey, Victor Guzman at Monterrey. And it's a very good roster in terms of CONCACAF. It's not going to beat the United States. It's not going to beat a good European team, but it's a mainstay team in CONCACAF, and it's good enough to win a group with Qatar, Honduras, and Haiti. But going into the midfield, I'm going to go through the lineup, actually. It's going to be Memo Ochoa in net, Julian Araujo, Cesar Montes, Jorge Sanchez, and Jesus Gallardo in the back. Center defensive midfield, it'll be Edson Alvarez. In front of him will be Sebastián Cordova and Luis Romo. On the left wing, it's going to be Alexis Vega. On the right wing, it's going to be Uriel Antuña. And up top is going to be Feyenoord goal scorer and menace, Santiago Jimenez, who has been incredible for Feyenoord over the last season. Coming off the bench, Oberlin Pineda, who had a great season at AEK Athens, won them the league. Henry Martin, great season at Club America. And just Luis Chavez, who scored that banger of a free kick at the World Cup. It's a deep team. It's Mexico's top team. It's just not the best version of Mexico. They're not in their glory days anymore. They struggled at the Nations League. I'm not expecting them to win this tournament, but they're going to win this group. Going into Qatar, who I have coming second in this tournament, they had a piss poor World Cup. Let's not lie to ourselves. They were not good enough. And they're not a great roster. I'm going to be for real. They're not a very moving team. They didn't even bring Akraf Afif to this Gold Cup, but they made the semifinals last time out. Almoez Ali has done well in his games against CONCACAF opponents, and they have a pretty solid foundation of a midfield. They played at a World Cup. No matter how badly it went, they have something that Honduras don't have. They have something that Haiti don't have. And teams later, even on in the knockout stages, don't have. They don't have players that have played at a World Cup. They don't have that experience. So that's why I have Qatar coming in second in this group. I've got Honduras coming in third place in this group. I don't see this team really making any moves. Ideally, this would be a very good CONCACAF team. They've got a great striker in Albert Ellis, who's been playing in Europe for years now. They've got some good MLS talent. They've got their Romel Kyotos. They've got their Brian Acostas. They've got their Josef Rosaleses. But it's just not enough for them to have these names when they don't perform internationally. They lost 4-1 to Canada in their Nations League game. They have not been good in past Gold Cups. They didn't qualify for the World Cup. They were last in the octagonal. And it's just not it's not a disciplined team. It's not it doesn't have a real system. And a lot of that can be blamed on coaching, but a lot of that could also be blamed on this team not having anybody in Europe. There's only Albert Ellis. There's no other European talent on this team, and they didn't even call up Romel Kyoto, who I believe is the second best Honduran player. So I don't expect much out of this Honduras team. I have them coming third in the group, only finishing ahead of Haiti, who I will get to now, who I'll get to them right now, actually. Haiti, I have them finishing last in this group. Captained by Ricardo Ade, their defense is very weak. They have a couple of European mainstays, I guess. Their goalkeeper, Alexandre Perea, is the goalkeeper for Strasbourg. They have Dukens Nazon, who scored 17 goals in the Bulgarian league this season. And then they have a couple of MLS mainstays as well. They've got Derek Etienne, who's their main striker. They've got Fafa Picot. And they have just the rest of their team is spread out through the world. They've got a player playing at Hapoel Haifa in Israel, in Carnegie Antoine. They've got Franze Pierre, also playing in Israel, Maccabi Haifa. But enough about where their players are playing. It's a weak roster. they don't play good teams. Even in games against teams like Montserrat, they have trouble finishing. They don't have a pure number 9, even though Dukan's Nazon is a number 9 over at CSKA Sofia. He doesn't play as the 9 there. They play him on a side with Derek Etienne. Up front will either be Fafa Picot, Jairo Jean, Francais Piriot. It's not a consistent lineup, and it's not a consistent enough team. I have IT placing last in this Gold Cup. Moving on to Group C, and this is the most open group in the tournament. You've got Panama, Costa Rica, El Salvador, and Martinique. Any team other than Martinique could win this group. Any team other than Martinique can finish second. I'm not really going to touch that much on Martinique. I don't think they're a good team. They've consistently sucked at the Gold Cup, dominated by Puerto Rico in the preliminary, and they just unfortunately for the viewer, to be honest, were able to get through and make the Gold Cup, making this group very uninteresting. But Panama is going to win this group. I believe in the talent that this team has. The World Cup run in 2018, it's a lot of similar players from that run, but it's more than that now. This Panama team has continuation where others don't. They've got real studs for Concacaf in this team. And they've played a successful Nations League campaign, finished 4th in the Nations League, beating out Costa Rica to make that final. And they have the skill of individual players over the rest of this group. They've got the skill of Anibal Godoy, who's been in this Panama team for years. They've got Coco Carrasquilla, who's been one of the best holding midfielders in MLS this season over at Houston. And then they've got Michael Murillo playing at Anderlecht in Belgium, who's been one of the best right backs in CONCACAF for as long as I can remember. Harold Cummings, Fidel Escobar, Eric Davis, Alberto Quintero, Joel Barcenas, the usual suspects for Panama are still there. And with a relatively weak group in terms of top heaviness, I believe the favorite are Panama going into this. Second place, I have Costa Rica, who would be my favorite going into this group if they had Keylor Navas here, but they decided not to bring Keylor Navas, or Keylor Navas decided not to come. So I have them coming second in this group. It's a strong defense. It's a rigid structure. Not a lot of creativity in this roster, but they have CONCACAF experience. They know how to win against weaker opponents, and they have just the continuation, which is a very important thing in international tournaments. I expect them to go into this with a back 5 of Kendall Waston, Juan Pablo Vargas, Carlos Martinez will be the center backs. Francisco Calvo could be in there as a left back. He could be in there as a center back. And Kisher Fuller on the right. Midfield will be Celso Borges, Wilmer Asofaifa, and Rowan Wilson, with the 2 strikers being Joel Campbell and Anthony Contreras. They won a game at the World Cup. They got absolutely destroyed by Spain at the World Cup. They scored 2 goals against Germany at the World Cup. It was a very up and down World Cup for them. But they had Keylor Navas. They had Brian Ruiz. They don't have those guys anymore for this run at the Gold Cup. That being said, I think they'll have enough to get through to the next round, given that the rest of their group is El Salvador and Martinique, who I don't believe are particularly strong. Getting into El Salvador now, they don't have that much talent. I'm gonna be as blunt as it can be. They're not a very talented side. They have mid-tier MLS players as their best players. In Alexander Roldan, yeah, that's their best player, and he's a good MLS player. He's a solid right back. But after that, you're seeing players at CD FAS, Alianza FC, San Carlos, CD Anguilla. It's not a great team. Joshua Perez, former LAFC player, is their best attacker in my eyes. So it's not a very good roster. The reason I can see them making it out of this group is I think Hugo Perez is the best coach in CONCACAF. I mean that over John Herdman. I mean that over Greg Berhalter, over Diego Cocas, who was just fired, actually. So over whoever Mexico is going to have in there as their interim, over Luis Suarez of Costa Rica. I believe that Hugo Perez has a vision for this El Salvador team that he can see them go through in a group just based on his tactics. He's going to have them playing a very deep line. He's going to have them playing passive football, but I don't really think it's going to be a bunker team, more as an absorbing team. They're going to absorb an attack and they're going to counter more so than they're going to play direct football. It's going to be a very interesting thing to see in Concacaf, because Concacaf is either very direct or very tiki-taka based. They don't have a lot of pressing. They don't have a lot of counterattack. I'm seeing El Salvador being that counterattacking team that could catch teams by surprise. Overall, though, it's a young and inexperienced group. Not a lot of talent. I have them coming third in the group. Fourth place in the group, I have Martinique. I'm not going to get into that really. They were really bad throughout the entire process of the Nations League. They barely scrapped through the preliminary. I know it's a 2-0 win on the scorecard, but Puerto Rico were not capable of beating this team, and their last goal came off a goalkeeper being in the box, dribble, goal, open goal. And I just don't see this team doing anything. I'm not going to get into their roster makeup or anything because it's just not worth it. They're going to lose. Group D, I have Canada winning this group. I think they're the best team in this group. They have the strongest roster. They have continuation in team structure. John Herdman has been a very good coach over the time at Canada, and he got them to a World Cup. It shouldn't be problematic for him to go through and beat Guadalupe, Guatemala, and Cuba, which is a very weak group. I'm going to leave it at that. I'll give you their lineup going into this. No Alphonso Davies at this tournament, no Tejan Buchanan at this tournament, and no Jonathan David at this tournament. Canada, Nations League finalists, weaker roster than they had in the Nations League, but I still think they're the favorites going into this. They'll start Milan Borjan in net. They'll have Zachary Broguillard as the right back with Kamal Miller and Steven Vittoria as center backs, Sam Adekugbe as their left back, Galatasaray left back. Richie Lorea is going to be coming off the bench. Midfield, they've got Porto star Steven Eustáquio, along with Jonathan Osorio and David Wotherspoon. Up top, you've got Lucas Cavallini, Junior Hoylett, and Jacob Schaffelberg. Not the same roster as you'll see at a World Cup. No Alphonso Davies, no Tejan Buchanan, no Jonathan David, but it's still a very good roster comparatively to CONCACAF. They're going to win this Gold Cup group. My second place in this group is actually Guadalupe, and they were a preliminary winner. They won in the prelims in order to make it to this Gold Cup, but they have quality chance creators. Their roster's not particularly strong, but watching them play against Cuba, against the Montserrats and Hades, they're not a bad team in terms of creativity and quality. They lack a big name. They're grimy and aggressive. It's a really fun team to watch, and they're an underdog going into the next round for me. Luther Archimede is their leading man up top, former first-round Super Draft pick for the New York Red Bulls, but he has trouble finishing. He missed a lot of chances against Cuba in the Nations League, made them go to the prelims, but I think this team, I see the vision with them. I think it's a good side in terms of CONCACAF, and they're going to be able to make it through to the next round. Guatemala, I have coming third. Weak roster. They very rarely win tight games, although they did beat Costa Rica about 8 days ago. And they're just not, they don't have enough MLS talent on their roster. It's a disorganized, not a particularly aggressive team, and I just don't think their style will fit a game against Guadalupe, where Guadalupe, I believe, will go in and beat them and go to the next round. Last place in the group, I have Cuba. I've gone quickly in this group just because not a lot of rosters, not a lot of names that you'll recognize going into this tournament. They dominated the last flight of the Nations League. They won that pretty comfortably, but they haven't played a good team until recently. They played Uruguay and Chile, and they got beat both times. But they haven't played a good team other than those since 2019, where they were beaten by the U.S. So it's not It's not a team that has played sufficient opponents, and they also just don't have any talent. There's no MLS players on this team. There's a couple of USL guys on this team, and then a lot of Caribbean players playing in Cuba, in Dominican Republic. It's not a very sound roster, and I don't believe in their coaching outlook and their makeup of the team enough to go through. So that leaves us with a quarterfinals of the USA, Qatar, Panama, Guadalupe, Mexico, Jamaica, Canada, Costa Rica. Let's start off with the first one. That's USA versus Qatar. I have the USA winning that game. Going into the next one, Panama, Guadalupe. As much as I like this Guadalupe team, Panama's winning this game pretty comfortably. Both of those, I don't really see how it could be a close game. Qatar could cause the U.S. some problems if they are up to the standard they were at the last Gold Cup. You saw they did cause problems at the last Gold Cup. USA barely getting away with a win there due to that late Jesse Zardes goal. Other side of the bracket, Mexico, Jamaica. It's going to be a great game. I think that's the best game of the quarterfinals. Mexico is going to beat Jamaica and make it to the semifinals. They're just better suited for CONCACAF ball than Jamaica are, and I don't believe in the coaching Jamaica has in order to beat a team like Mexico. Canada, Costa Rica. Canada will win that one. Moving into the semifinals, I have an upset in the semifinals. I have Panama beating the United States in the semifinals in order to get to the finals. The United States, very MLS heavy team. Panama, very MLS heavy team as well. They've also got their Panamanian league. They've got their Costa Rican league as well. Don't get me wrong. But I really believe in this Panama team in order to beat a top heavy team like the United States in this tournament, just because they have the continuity in their squad, they have the coaching, and they have the ability to bunker back and make the U.S. players make really difficult decisions. It's something you'll see all throughout this tournament with Panama. You're going to make players make mistakes that aren't quality players. And with the U.S., maybe if you have Giovanni Reyna or Christian Pulisic, you're going to make these players regret sitting back. But with the United States team right now, I don't see that creator, that star that's going to be making chances. Maybe Georgi Mihailovic fills that role, but I don't see it coming into this tournament. I have Panama going to the finals over the United States. Mexico, Canada in the other semifinals. I have Canada going through. Mexico, interim head coach, first time playing a legit competition is Jamaica. They'll be washed from that. Canada has a relatively straightforward game against Costa Rica. Canada's going to go through and win that, and Canada will go and win the tournament over Panama in my eyes. But tell me what you think. CONCACAF Gold Cup, you're not going to see a lot of media coverage from it, so I'll do the best I can to bring you all that you want. Make sure to like, subscribe, come to more Fútbol MLS content. We're going to be going through MLS. We're going to be going through CONCACAF. We're going to be going through the U.S. national team and all of the things that come with it. Maybe we go to Europe. I don't think so. This is going to be a very MLS-centric channel. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll see you for the next one.